What up, though, Detroit? So, you already know the deal. Just giving a shout out to Petty Tupac TV. Like, comment, subscribe. You already know the deal. We have to support everybody's businesses, and you already know how it goes. We support each other. You know what I'm saying? Make Detroit win.
Leslie Allen Williams was born on the 4th of July, 1953 in Detroit, Michigan. His mom neglected him from a young age, so he was sent to and raised by his grandparents. His mother was a prostitute who worked out her own home. His mother's second husband, named Lyle, was spotted by children in the Garden City neighborhood receiving sexual acts from Leslie's two younger sisters, which were his stepchildren. Lyle admitted during an interview that he knew his wife was a prostitute because he watched her perform sexual acts while he spied on her in the house. Lyle did a 4-year bid for his crime in a mental institution located in Ionia. Lyle divorced his mother, Dorothy, after his prison bid. Dorothy moved to California and married a man named James Adams. It didn't last long. She filed for a divorce shortly after. The night before the hearing, James went out looking for his wife and shot her in the head and then killed himself because he couldn't handle the grief. Leslie was sent to live with his grandparents. His criminal life began at the age of 17 in 1970 when he was arrested for breaking and entering a home near where he lived. He served only a year before getting out and continuing his criminal path. Over the next decade plus, Williams was repeatedly arrested for crimes that increased in severity. September 1983, he was arrested for sexually assaulting a woman in her home, for which he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Before I continue, do you see how they will give a drug offender a parolable life, which he may serve 20 years plus on average, but repeatedly let out sex offenders because it's classified as a mental health issue in Michigan? Crazy. People don't change their true sexual preferences. The chances of a sex offender reoffending is a lot higher than a drug dealer. Anyway, he committed the sexual assault crime less than 2 weeks after he was paroled from prison for the B&E. I wonder what happened to him in prison. Maybe some set him off. Maybe he was a victim. Hurt people tend to hurt people. In 1990, Williams, who had served 8 years in prison since his arrest for the rape, was granted a parole. 9 months later, he killed his first victim. On September 14, 1991, Williams attacked 18-year-old Kami Villanueva in her home in Oakland County. He raped and killed her, then buried her body in a shallow grave that Williams had dug up. Then on September 29, 1991, Williams attacked sisters Melissa Urban, who was 14, and Michelle Urban, who was 16. The two were walking out at night when Williams attacked. He raped and killed the two, then put their bodies in his car. He drove to a secluded area and dug up 2 shallow graves, but before burying them, Williams said he had sex with their bodies. 5 months later, on January 4th, 1992, he raped and killed 15-year-old Cynthia Marie Jones. Just like all of the victims before, Williams buried her in a shallow grave. In an interview with the Flint Journal, he admitted he knew right from wrong. He blamed his uncontrollable sexual desires on his extreme sexual abuse as a child. It was noted in detectives' paperwork that Leslie kept a sort of scorecard to detail his victim's physical appearances. He is currently serving 7 life sentences, 3 of which are natural. I think we all agree he does not deserve to ever walk free again. He will forever be a monster. Number 2 is Benjamin Atkins, aka the Woodward Corridor Killer. He was an orphan child born in Detroit, abandoned by his mother at the young age of 2 years old. He was raped at the age of 10. He used to ride around with his mother and watch her turn tricks in the front seat with multiple Johns. Benjamin was described by FB analysts as a closeted homosexual, possibly because of his upbringings. His sexuality is alleged and not confirmed, I might add. He carried out rapes and murders for 9 months before capture. At the time, FBI say they have never seen so many in a short period of time in that era. I don't believe that all unless they were just talking about Michigan. Trust me, it was a lot more serial killers doing way more serious things, way more frequent than him. At first, his crimes went unnoticed because things like this in the Highland Park, Detroit area were common because it's a high-risk area already. Highland Park until this day is known for violence, drugs, and prostitution. Highland Park hosts the only transgender area trick stroll in Michigan. As bodies started to pile, the FBI got involved. Law enforcement interviewed a prostitute who survived Atkins sexual assault and escaped before he could finish her off. Her name was Darlene Saunders. She said her attacker's name was Tony, which was Benjamin's middle name. He was brought in a short time later. A detective got him to spill his guts by saying, You never had a father. I have a son just your age when you were a bandit. You need to get this off your chest. Just talk to me. Atkins had 5 cheeseburgers as he confessed. He told the detectives about 11 bodies, which of one he had hid in a secret basement. All of his victims were sprung upside down, surrounded by trash. What the hell? Family of the victims despised him, and some jurors felt bad for him because of his upbringing as a child. He was eventually sentenced to 11 life terms. He didn't serve it out, though. He died from an infection caused by HIV. Tell me what y'all think about him and his upbringing, and was that an excuse? Well, really never is, but I'm asking you. Number 3, Archard Edward Sloan, aka the babysitter killer. From 1976 to 1977, he murdered 4 more children in the Oakland County, Michigan area. One of the first victims that was known was 12-year-old Mark Stebbins. In February, he was last seen leaving a place called Legion's Hall. 2 days later, his body was found in a snowbank near a parking lot near 10 Mile and Greenfield area in Southfield, Michigan. He had been strangled and sexually abused with an object. Yeah, a real weirdo. He was bound by his wrists and ankles. In December, Jill Robinson, who was 12, had an argument with her mother and ran away. Poor choice, kids. If you are listening, you are not ready for this cold, sadistic world yet. It was initially thought of as a runaway case. The day after Christmas, her body was found in the snow off the 75 freeway area in Troy, Michigan, a nice suburb. This vicious, psychotic animal blew this girl's face off with a 12-gauge shotgun. Man, what a loser. A week later, a 10-year-old named Christine Malik went missing after purchasing a magazine from a 7-Eleven in Berkeley, Michigan. The community raised $17,000 after the mother begged the person who had her captive to let her go. About 19 days later, her body was found on the side of a road by a mailman fully dressed in Franklin Village. The killer put her hands and chest in a known funeral style before leaving the scene. Timothy King was the last known victim of Sloan. He was only 11 years old. He was left home alone by his family. His parents thought he would be fine home alone, as we all think an 11-year-old would be. But this is a sick world. Tim asked his sister to borrow 30 cents from her, and as she was about to leave, he left his home with his skateboard to purchase candy at the local drugstore. Witnesses say they saw Tim leave the drugstore through a back entrance when this sadistic predator approached him in the parking lot. Just as the last victim, the father named Barry begged for the release of his son. March 22nd, 2 teens found Tim's body in a shallow ditch near Gill Road. His skateboard was placed next to his small body and his clothes fully pressed in the arm on top of him. He had been strangled to death and sexually assaulted. He was strangled approximately 6 hours before his body was found. Other children were found dead or missing during the time and in the same area, but none were tied to this monster. I believe it was multiple people working together or multiple people doing the same thing at the time. Had to be, because the cases and the finding of the bodies don't add up. All of Oakland County soon flew into panic mode A huge search was executed for Tim in the entire Detroit metropolitan area. Detroit News printed a letter about Marion King writing that she hoped Timothy could come home and have his favorite meal served up, which was Kentucky Fried Chicken. A brief profile was created of the killer after the disappearance of Timothy. A task force checked out more than 18,000 tips. The task force disbanded in 1978 after failing to make an arrest or charge a suspect. Over the years, some victims' family criticized the police investigation. This resulted in 24 arrests on unrelated charges in a multi-state child pornography ring bust that was operating out of North Fox Island in Lake Michigan. One suspect people thought was the killer was a man named Christopher Bush. He had sexually violated a teenager named Vincent Gunnels on May 7, 1976 in a cabin near Ash Lake. Christopher's father was a top executive at General Motors. Christopher had been in police custody shortly before Timothy's disappearance on November 1978. Bush was found dead in the apartment. Investigators ruled this death a homicide because of a gunshot wound to the head that was so-called self-inflicted, but there was no residue on his hands. I wonder who got him. A search of his apartment revealed a terrifying drawing of a screaming child that resembled one of the victims named Mark Stebbins. The King family reported that the ligature marks found on the scene were missing, and there is no sign of it being documented in the case files in 2012. Oakland County prosecutor Miss Jessica Cooper said in a press conference that a man named Archard Sloan, who was a convicted pedophile, became a person of interest in the murders. Cooper also said that the hair found in his 1966 Pontiac Bonneville matches the DNA profile of the hairs found on the two male victims Sloan was mentioned by. This is why I think they was working together. He admitted to having pedophile friends, and it was proven that he had pedophile friends. Others said that Sloan would lend his car to pedophile friends. Other people said it too. After many years had passed, Sloan received a life sentence for the rape of a young boy in 1983. He remained behind bars with the life sentence. Others suspected killers like John Wayne Gacy were looked at, but according to DNA tests in 2013, Gacy was uninvolved in the Oakland County killings. Another top suspect in the murders was Ted Lamborghini, who was believed to have been involved in a child porn ring in the 1970s. Instead of taking a polygraph test for a D sentence on the murder cases, Ted pleaded guilty to 15 counts of sex-related charges in young boys. He refused to get a D sentence and instead pled guilty to 15 sex crimes. He didn't want to get questioned about the murders. They had to be working together, man. They had to. If y'all enjoyed this, please make sure you smash like, subscribe, and comment. If you made it all the way to the end and you already watching, you might as well press like. Tell me what else y'all want to hear about. Peace and blessings be upon y'all. Big 5.